Hey guys, welcome back to the Nerd Hangout. In this episode, we're gonna talk all about Masters of the Universe. He-Man, one of my favorite childish toys. Let's go. Like I said, Masters of the Universe, or as we know him, He-Man toys, was one of my most favorite childish toys ever, and I really am excited to talk about it. To start with the origins of Masters of the Universe, we have to go back to 1982, when it all starts with the toy line. Oh yeah, let's talk about Masters of the Universe. Well, Masters of the Universe all started with a toy company called Mattel in 1982, trying to compete with the most famous toy collection at the time, Star Wars. Mattel had its success with toys like Hot Wheels and Barbie, but did not have much success with the action figure market. Now, compared to many other toys, it usually goes this way, that a famous movie or a famous TV show comes out and then they make a toy line out of those products. Now, at 1982, the most famous toys out there was Star Wars. Now, all of us love Star Wars, there's no doubt about that. And Mattel, the little toy company, wanted to compete against them. Now, after the first movie of Star Wars, the action figures had mass success. The irony is Mattel had offered the rights to the first toy line of Star Wars but turned it down because they did not believe it would have any success. They were so wrong. So the rights were given to Kenner, which was bought out later in 1990 by Hasbro. Whoops. That was a bad choice. That was a major blunder. Mattel found out soon after that this was the future of toys for boys and tried to compete with action figures like Clash of the Titans, Flash Gordon, and Battlestar Galactica, but they were not successful. Star Wars was far too big and popular, so they wanted something better. Then they wanted to create something themselves, not spoofing of a movie or a TV show. So the team of Mattel Marketing was set on the task. They gathered a bunch of 5-year-olds to see what they were interested in, to make some research. And one thing they noticed was it seems that they were tired of everyone telling them what to do, and that they had no power themselves, but they had to obey when grown-ups tell them what to do. So after the research, they found out the famous catchphrase of all time, "I have the power!" Kids loved it. I loved it. I still love it. It worked. They then decided that they wanted a barbarian-like hero, like Conan the Barbarian-ish. And at the same time, a man called Roger Sweet heard about the idea and was working on a design that never had been seen before. And he wanted his creation to completely overshine Star Wars toys. So he designed them bigger in size and much more muscular. He wanted the competition to look wimpy in comparisons. He made a sample. He made 3 figures and made them extremely muscular and big, and took a different approach on facial expressions. The action figures, known at the time, only had one simple, non-expressatory face, totally neutral. Roger put a more grungy expression on the samples, like they were angry and ready to fight. The first take of the toys were the 3 prototypes. Tank Man, with a tank on his head, and Bullet Head, who looked surprisingly a lot like Boba Fett from the Star Wars French line, but we're not gonna get into that. And the last one, the Barbarian. He had a white rug on, a battle axe, and he called him He-Man. The guys from Mattel loved it. Now, looking at these characters now, it's kind of funny to look at, especially the tank head and the bullet head, but this was just the first 3 examples of making a product. But it was awesome to see when you were only a child. But they wanted some changes, and the task was given over to Mark Taylor. He drew out and created the final looks of the characters, and the best one, the main villain. For my generation, Masters of the Universe had the most iconic villain of all time, Skeletor. I mean, I loved Skeletor. The first time I saw him, I was mind blown. This is a villain that I am scared of. He was one of the baddest villains to come out of the 80s, but when that is said, I hated his voice.
Skeletor to King Randor! Skeletor to King Randor! Come in, you royal boob! Cause unlike you, Batros has a brain!
On your guard!
Cause you were a whip scientist and you could be a whip villain! It's the sorceress, you boob! They should call you Wimplash! Quiet, or I'll turn you into a suitcase! Why do I surround myself with fools?
Okay, I must admit that nowadays that laugh and that speech is actually as iconic as the villain himself, but I never liked it. I mean, I wanted him to... But they went with... But I don't know why. Skeletor was created by Mark Taylor, and the origin of the idea of Skeletor is actually kind of sinister, and comes from Mark Taylor's experience from when he was a kid. Mark was at an amusement park called Pike Amusement Park, in a haunted house ride called the Pike Funhouse, where there was a supposed dummy of a decaying corpse, where the face was only a skull. Mark Taylor always believed it to be a real decaying body, since it was too realistic not to be, and nobody believed him, of course. They just believed it was a very authentic doll, or a prop. Well, the scare of that sight stuck with him into his maturity and became the inspiration of Skeletor. It was actually proven later that it was a real corpse. It was on the Discovery Channel or National Geographic and stuff like this, that was actually a real person hanging in the funhouse. Ew. It was a real corpse. Damn. Anyway, so that means that this cartoon villain was actually inspired by a real dead corpse. Anyway, I want to talk about another iconic character as well. They wanted to create vehicles for He-Man also. So they created the Battle Ram and the Wind Raider, but they wanted one more, but were running out of budget. Mattel had another line of toys called the Big Jim, where they had a tiger, but it was not a scale with the He-Man toys at all. It was the size of a horse comparing to He-Man. At first they almost decided that they can't use the tiger because of its size. But then they painted him green, put a saddle on him and called him Battle Cat, and he became He-Man's best friend and mount. And they loved it. Oh yes, Battle Cat. I mean, that thing was awesome. Just seeing this green, huge tiger that you could ride on. I mean, come on. You gotta love that. The original idea was that the toy line was just going to be named by the main hero, He-Man. But Mattel marketing division felt it did not cling enough to sell. They tried Lords of Power, but it was turned down and believed to be too religious. Then they decided on the name Masters of the Universe, although the creators of the toy line did not love it and just wanted He-Man. They believed that Masters of the Universe was way too long and was actually a bit over the top and kind of braggy. Well, Masters of the Universe is what Mattel went with, and that is what we know him as today. But I think most of us, the children, just knew it as He-Man, so the creators kind of had their way anyway. Anyway, the name looked really good on the boxes of the toys when you bought them. Then came the time where they had to market the new toy, and their first customer was Child World.
Child World, let's take a look and see.
I'm Peter Pan.
Now, they had a problem with this toy, Child World that is. No one knows who these characters are, unlike Star Wars, where there is a movie, so everyone knows them and their backstory. So the designers kind of stopped to think for themselves as they were pitching the idea to Child World, and as they were sitting there trying to sell He-Man's product, they said, "Oh, didn't we tell you? we're going to sell a comic book with every character to tell them the backstory. Now, they had no such idea at all, and they just pulled it out of their ass. But Child World, they loved it and said that's a great idea. So that's how the mini comic books were created. So the idea is that the comic book is going to be free and it's going to teach them all about Masters of the Universe. And remember, this is before the cartoon. Okay, I gotta stop you right there. I think this is actually so funny and so cool that they actually did this. They just pulled out of their ass some ideas at the last minute while pitching the idea to the seller companies, to the toy companies. Some things, just great things happen in an instant. It's so awesome. So now they had to create backstories in forms of comic books and include them free with every toy. When you think about it, it's actually a very brilliant idea with the small comic books in every toy line. I mean, if you bought a figure, it had its own backstory. When you think about like Dungeons & Dragons, like I talked about in the last episode, where I described my idea of a backstory. In this way, you had the backstory already with each character. I think it was a great idea. So to the toy company. Awesome. Out of those comic books, we got Eternia, the home of the Masters of the Universe, and the Power Sword, or the two sides of the Power Sword, where one belongs to He-Man and the other to Skeletor. And Skeletor wanted to get both the swords and combine them and use them as a key to open Castle Grayskull and unlock all its mysteries. Oh yes, Castle Grayskull. That was an awesome toy to play with. It was built like this so it could carry all the toys inside it, and it was just an awesome home base for He-Man. Castle Grayskull. This thing was amazing to play with. This was the best toy in the world at that time, believe me. And Skeletor's home base also was Snake Mountain, which also was a cool toy. Looked amazing. I must say that Castle Grayskull was one of the most famous part of the toy line, definitely for me, apart from He-Man himself and Skeletor. The funny thing is, actually when they molded the first take of Castle Grayskull, they made the door entrance too small, so the figures couldn't fit inside. So they had to recast it to make it big enough for the toys to play with. So in 1982, He-Man hits the shelf and the kids went crazy for him. Creators of the Masters of the Universe promised $13 million in the first year of the product. They earned $38 million. Damn, now that sounds like success. And I understand why. It was such an amazing toy to play with. Now after selling the product to Child World, they went for the bigger company, Toys R Us. And they had the comic book idea ready to pitch to them like they did with Child World. And the guys from Toys R Us, well, they just kind of looked at them and said, "Didn't you say that this was a toy for 5-year-olds? Yeah. But 5-year-olds can't read. What's the point of the comic books?" And there were crickets. Well, yeah, okay. I can see where the problem would be with the comics in this aspect, but it became better. And after a few seconds of awkward silence, they responded, "Oh, didn't we tell you about the 2-hour special of animations cartoons we're going to air?" And they pulled another fast one out of their ass. It was not planned at all. And they sold that pitch to Toys R Us as well. Now after this, they had to go to Filmation to make a deal for them to make a cartoon out of their toy line. Now the comic book idea was brilliant, but everyone remembers Masters of the Universe as the cartoon.
And the Masters of the Universe. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power!"
They had no plan of making any money out of these cartoons itself. It was just a way for them to brand their stories to Toys R Us and to children, and hopefully break even. Filmation then spent the next year on making the TV show Masters of the Universe. Then after that year, the marketing guys from Mattel came to check it out and were in awe of what they come out of the bullshitting they had to make to sell their products. And out of this branding idea, it was much more than they had ever planned. They looked at one another and said that this is going to be a hit. And man, were they right. In September 1983, Master of the Universe invaded TV. And the toys that were famous already became so much more famous. And the TV show became even more popular than the toys themselves. Now, comparing the TV show to the comic books, it became a lot softer. The comic books idea was more a dark story, but when it came to the animated TV show, they toned it way down. To when I look at it today, it makes me kind of laugh.
And no matter what a stranger may say, never go away with them. Terrible things have happened to some kids who did. The smart thing is to just walk away, or in my case, just float away.
And the funny thing actually about the cartoon is that it had a lot of moral stories. In the end of each episode of the cartoon, they had a moral point.
Being the most powerful man in the universe isn't all that makes He-Man such a great hero. Being strong is fine, but there's something even better. In today's story, He-Man used something even more powerful than his muscles to beat Skeletor. You know what it was? If you said his brain, you were right. And just like a muscle, your brain is something you can develop to give yourself great power.
I think the TV show is to thank that the toys were so popular for so long as they were. Many of us remember the cartoon now and takes us completely back to our childhood. And it is a fun fact that the cartoon only came out to give the toy line a backstory and to sell toys, unlike Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica that came out after the movie and the TV show. But for Masters of the Universe, the toy stores were worried that no one would buy a toy that had no story, and no one knew anything about. It's a fun fact that the cartoon only came out to give the toy line a backstory to sell the toys, and which has given us so much joy for so many years, and it still takes me back to my childhood. Anyways guys, this was just a really short episode, again talking about the Masters of the Universe, which gave me so much joy as a child, and I'm going to talk about other kinds of toys like Turtles, Transformers, whatever I can think of. And yeah, this was just another episode of the Nerd Hangout. Hope you had fun guys, see you next time. Bye nerds.